Okay, for my grass skirt I'm using natural raffia, and I bought some in two different colours because I want to make it quite random. So I've bought some in natural, which is kind of a beigey skin colour, and I have some here which I bought which is just, well, they said it was white, but I think it's just off-white. I'll be mainly using this colour for the skirt, and I'm going to mix it in with a few bits of natural colour as well, just so it makes it look a bit more random rather than all one colour. The natural raffia I bought off eBay in natural, bought from this seller. The white one I got off eBay again. This one comes in 1 metre lengths from this seller, Floristry Warehouse. First I'm going to be using this jute rope. It's 6mm thickness. Obviously you want it to be your waist measurement, so I'd start from there. This piece is actually 1 metre long, which will be a bit longer than I need. And this is what I'm going to use to start wrapping my pieces of raffia around to make my skirt. Fold your piece of string directly in half, and then just hold it with a thumb or finger to mark your halfway point. Okay, next thing to do, as you can see we've got our cord tied between two chairs. You can more or less see what we're doing here. We've got a piece of string which it was doubled, your waist measurement, plus I added a bit extra. I then sectioned off some raffia here, put them into large bundles, but what we need to do is thin it down a bit more. Take a few strands, fold it in half. This is where two people will help. Hold it tight and get your string and just tie a knot. Showing you again. Fold your stuff in half, pull it tight, like so. And here is my finished grass skirt. Okay, this tutorial is for making the skirt. Now, obviously anybody knows who's tried this, it is really hard trying to wrap a straight edge around curves and hips and of course a bum. So obviously when you try to do it, you wrap it round, because it's basically a wrap round skirt, and if you're like me you might have quite a curve to your back as well, and you have many issues with a lot sticking out at the back here. Even if with the sash around it will only take it in, you still get quite a lot of bunching. Option 2 is to put a couple of darts in the back, in which you might need help having somebody do this for you. Don't forget you also want to turn over your edge and your fabric by about 1 centimetre to 1.5 centimetres, so you need to count for that. So basically I'm going to start wrapping mine here and there, and putting in 2 darts in the back helps take the excess off. But there is also another way you can do it, and that is doing sort of between an E-stitch and a gathering stitch to help pull it in. Okay, you can see here on the left where I'm pointing, is the longer piece that goes underneath, reaches her knees. Over here I've cut to the same length along the top, but slightly shorter, the overlayer. It's still cut a bit longer than I'd need at this point, but that's just something I want to do just in case along the way something goes wrong. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to place one piece over the other. I'll show you this. Okay, just showing on this practice piece here, because you might have fabric like mine that has a good side and a bad side. Mine has a slightly shinier side and the bad side is very rough and matte. So what you need to do is making sure you've got your good side, your fabric facing down, and then on your other piece the other good side will also be facing down. Usually the rule would be that you'd put a good side to a good side, but because we're flipping this the other way around to the front, it's just a slightly different way. So then you will run your seam along the top. You'll also do an understitch, which I'll show you in a bit after I've sewn the main pieces. And basically what you'll be doing is just flipping your piece to the outside. So I've now got the good side and the good side showing. So just going to my main skirt here, got my good side facing down there, and the second piece has got the good side facing downwards there. So then this side will become your bad side. But if your fabric is the same both sides, then it won't matter. So here you can see I've got the longer piece of the skirt underneath, the shorter piece on top. I've pinned it all the way along, and I'm just going to go and run it under the sewing machine. I can see here I've done it along the selvage edge. I will be cutting it off, so my measurement actually started from here when I measured down lengthwise. So I've accounted for that, so I have not measured from the top of the frayed edge here, I've measured from this point. Okay, after I sewed the top edge, you might need somebody to help you next part, because I had it put around me, and where you got the edges, it was cut to shape whilst I was holding it. And as you can see here, I've got the shorter layer, which is the top, and that's the other side that meets. And on the other side, I'll just show you this picture, is the part that's underneath that comes further in. So that's why that side has been angled in a lot more. Okay, in a minute I'm going to show you understitching, which is basically helping to fold the fabric next to the seam. At the moment you could fold it and iron it flat to a point, but the understitch will help force the fabric forward a bit more for you. But first of all, I'm going to take an iron, and here we've got the shiny side, the good side. This is the bad side. To take your flaps and keeping your fabric slightly taut, you want to iron your flaps upwards in that direction. I recommend that you iron both sides, especially if you've got a thick and heavy fabric like I'm using. Now I'm going to show you the understitching. Just showing you a test piece here. What you do with the top stitch is I pressed my flaps upwards with the iron earlier to help me, and you're running a little stitch down here just a couple of millimetres away from your seam. But as you go, you have to pull the fabric tight without obviously ripping it and making sure that your flap is facing up the whole time, so you're sewing that down as you go. This helps it bend over and forces that layer backwards a bit, almost like this way, same way you would do a lining. At the moment, I'm just coming to the end of doing my main skirt here. If I try and roll that over and iron it, as I said earlier, it'll be okay, but to help it, you really want to do that understitching so it helps force that layer underneath. Otherwise, you might end up with your liner actually wanting to roll forward. So at the moment, I'm just sewing, as I say, pulling it slightly tight as I go, a couple of millimetres away from your seam. Until we reach the end. Next, you just want to give it one final press with the iron. Okay, I'm just turning in the edges now to neaten the ends off on both sides. I forgot to take into consideration here that when you're turning the edge, then you come to turn it over, that edge needs to go in that way, this edge needs to go in that way. So if I continued turning in the edge the same way all the way down, this is my good side here, remember, then I would have this edge facing in like so, and that edge would be facing in that way, which we don't want. So just unpicking the last few stitches here, about 1.5 centimetres is going to be my turnover on the ends. So I've just unpicked it to about here, so I can then turn that one in that way, and then I can turn that one in the opposite way for the underneath layer. Okay, at this stage I'm just temporarily pinning the edges in. I'm just going to do a quick fit over the grass skirt, just to make sure that I'm 100% happy with how much is coming off the edges. And then once I've done that, I'll be just sewing a simple line down the edge to hold it in place. Okay, now my next part, I'm going to skip ahead a bit because I was going to gather it, and I've already marked it here with pins around the back just to bring that excess in. As I said at the beginning, you can either do darts or you can gather it if you want to bring it in. Just get rid of the excess around the back of your waist. But before I do that, whilst I got the opportunity with it lying perfectly flat, I've gone ahead and I've got my templates. Now, it was a bit difficult to work out just how many triangle shapes go all around the bottom of her skirt, and I think I could see somewhere between 8 and 10. So basically I took the figure between that, so I went for 9. So I've got 9 triangles I want to fit in, and the way to measure how wide each one on its own has got to be, you measure from the end to the other end, and I got about 1 metre 12, and you divide 9 triangles, or how many triangles you want, into that measurement of 1 metre 12, and mine came out with about 12.3 long and roughly about 10 centimetres high. And the best way to get this so it's all in proportion is I used the Adobe Photoshop program that can put it all in proportion for you. If you put your image size a certain length, it will figure out how high it's got to be so it doesn't distort your image or look too long or too square or whatever. Now I've originally drawn mine to a point, but when you look at the drawing, the bottom ones are actually rounded, like so, and these ones come more to a point at the top. So you can see here I've got the back of my skirt, and that would be the front there. And I'm going to take a pencil, I'm going to draw out my diamonds, my triangles, and go in and out of each image and draw it onto the back of my fabric. And after I've done that, I'll show you what I'm going to do next. Okay, you can see here I've now drawn out my pattern all the way along in pencil. Next thing I'm going to do is machine stitch around all the edges. Using this piece earlier that I did as a practice, you can see what I'm trying to achieve. You can just barely see some of the machine stitches, and then you'll be cutting in between that. Trying not to go through your stitches, otherwise the whole thing will come undone. If you just cut it as it is, obviously your material will fray, so that's the reasoning behind why you do the stitches. It'll just help hold those edges together a bit better for you. And if you're really still not happy and there's some slight fraying, you could always use things like fray check out there, or maybe a small dab of fabric glue that dries clear. You could put that on the edge if you come across any problem areas. I'm not sure how well this is going to show up on the camera, but you can just pick out, like here I've run some stitches in the machine following my pencil lines. It's not the easiest thing to do. It was quite difficult, it took about 3 hours doing it very carefully. It involves a lot of stopping and starting. You have to constantly keep your needle in and keep turning your fabric round to carry on. So the idea next will be to hand cut around the outside and then hand cut out the little diamonds and triangles. Okay, I've now finished cutting out my design. As you can see here, it's not absolute perfection, but it's close enough. What I've been doing now is working on my star templates, up here, and I've worked out that more or less the top of the sunflower star is roughly your halfway point. So I measured from the seam all the way down to the bottom here to the points to get your halfway point along here. I then marked the halfway point, and I know that on the longer side of the outer layer of the skirt is just covering the top of the sunflower. So in order for me to cut it level, I've pinned these on more or less where they're going to be. I've worked out my spacings for the rest of the design here, and this is where they're going to end up. And I've now cut it so it's just covering the top of the stars, and cut all the way along so it's level. It will be altered a bit later because one side is slightly higher than the other on the pictures and the drawings. Okay, we're having a few problems with the skirt, so instead of gathering, which I didn't like in the end, I decided to do some darts. Now it helps if you actually put the skirt around you and wrap it and have somebody mark where to put the darts. We've actually gone through to the back edge of the skirt here as well, as you can just see. I'll just open it out so you can have a better look. Okay, you can just see here what we've done. Of course you sew your darts from the inside. It's almost like a diamond shape. So I always go from this point. You sew to there, then you come in and taper it off towards the end here. And there are loads of tutorials out there show you how to do darts. But basically we just make sure you've got your pin securely in place after you've pinned it where they've got to be on you, and sew your line here and then back down to the edge there. So that's now what it looks like on the inside. You can also see here we've put a strip of Velcro on to help hold the skirt up because it was quite heavy. I was having a few issues, but basically that just goes onto there like so. It's quite a strong Velcro, which is what you need. This will just help hold it on. See, it's that strong I'm having trouble. So that's what I've done next. I've now gone ahead and embroidered the first row of triangles. The thread I've chosen is DMC, colour number 840, in kind of a chocolatey brown colour. When you get your thread, you'll find there's about 6 strands to actually make the whole piece itself. So what I've actually done is I've split it into 2 strands to thin it down a bit. Here we go, you can see it better here. I've just split it into just 2 strands. So it's literally the thickness that I've used to do the triangles because it needed to be thinned out a lot more. Okay, I've now skipped along to do the zigzaggy wave pattern. It's quite easy to do as we have a convenient line here to follow. Just remember that the inside row is a smaller distance than the outside row, so I fitted about 3 stitches each side on the inside. On the outside there's 4 stitches because you have a further distance to go round. I've used, to make it stand out, I've used the full thickness of the strand. I haven't split this one up into separate threads, so I've used the full 6 strands to make it really thick. So the triangles I've used just the 2 strands. This one I used 3 strands, and this one was the full 6 strands. I'm now going to try and infill the part in between that stands out white. Next I'm infilling the space in between the zigzags with embroidery thread again. I'm using DMC in colour blank. For this I'm using the whole 6 strands, so the full thickness that it comes in. Okay, to do this, see I'm poking my needle up here, just pulling my thread through. Basically I am doing just a straight satin stitch which is the most common stitch for embroidery. And I'm just coming up and I'm just making this pretty random. It's not absolutely perfect. There will be slight gaps in places, but I think that makes it a little bit more authentic, that it's not absolutely neat and tidy. As you can see, some places are a bit wider, some a bit shorter, but I think that just adds a bit of character to it. So I'm basically just doing that all the way along until I finish the end of my pattern. It's very easy to do. Okay, we're now moving on to the star shapes. Now, I realise that back in history they did not have embroidery machines, but I think once in a while it doesn't hurt to cheat. So on our embroidery machine, I've actually had these appliques made. They were made onto a interfaced type backing, so it's not too hard. I'll be putting the templates for these on my website, so you can grab them from there if you want to use them. Now, our machine will only embroider so big. We only have a big enough hoop to make our appliques so big. So what I've basically had to do is, I know these should start a bit lower, but you'll see here I've just folded over the edge of the front of the skirt here, and really the bottom of the I don't know really what to call these, but triangle shaped hems should really finish about here-ish. So I've got my length for where I want the points of these to finish, and it just about covers the top of the star, only just. So you need to do a little bit of measuring first to where you want it to come. It's completely up to you. I've worked out about 6 of these stars is going to be enough to finish, and I've spaced them about 15 centimetres apart. I'll just show you. First of all, I got my, sorry, I nearly forgot about this part. I got the height between where that point finishes on the zigzag to where the star's got to start, and then using the guide from the skirt, how far up these stars have got to be from the zigzag. So first, I've obviously gone and done that. Then once you've got the distance you want the bottom of your stars to start, you can start working out where they go. Now, mine's starting approximately 6.5 centimetres in, and then between that point and that point, mine is roughly, I'm just going to pull this up because it's not quite straight. Mine is approximately 15 centimetres from that point corner to the next one, and so on. And I've worked it out that when I get to the end it should be about 6.5–7 centimetres in from that end edge. So basically what I'm doing is I pin my star down first after I've measured where the next one should start, using these pins for your height. Pin my star down, and got an embroidery hoop. It's quite a big one. Trust me, it's really needed. Helps a lot. Here I have the gold thread I'm using to tack them down. It's a close enough match, so good that you can't actually see the stitching, and I can actually follow, sewing through to the back, the line of the stitching on the appliques. So you see these have already been done, and I can actually follow the direction over, and every so often I'll go over it 2 or 3 times in places, just basically sewing them through to the back. There are quite a few ways to sew on appliques, and there's plenty of videos on YouTube. But because my thread is such a good match, I'm able to follow the direction of the stitching, so it just looks like it's part of it. I'm going to continue now and sew the rest of these on. I'll be back in a short while, probably just a few seconds on this video. Bye! Okay, to save repeating myself, I've now skipped on ahead. Basically, I've cut out my pattern the same way as I did with the bottom, and I've embroidered my design up here. I've also put these tassels on. I went for ivory colour because I thought the white looked too bright against my skirt. I've just put it on against the model at the moment. And just see. I'll just show you where I got the tassels from. This is one of the tassels on its own before I hand sewed them on. They're extremely soft. If you go on to etsyshop.com, I found these. They're about 90mm long, and you get a pack of 20. So I needed about 34 altogether, I think it was, so I bought 2 packs of 20. I think these were extremely good buy. They're £3.8 for a pack of 20, plus just a little bit of shipping, which was pretty good, and that's the name of the shop.